I don't know where to start. First thing you say to me is, do you know where to start? No, I do. I know approximately where to start. So what I'm going to do is tell you that my grandma and grandpa Russell on my mother's side moved to from Newcomerstown to Barnhill, Ohio, because there were jobs in the coal mines, and I think this is all guesswork, but I think that they moved to Newcomerstown to Ohio because they had a cheap home they could buy here, and there were 10 kids in the family. So I think they moved here. Now this house was built on the side of a hill, and there were half a dozen other little towns down around near them. Not towns, but homes. And from my grandma's house, you could walk around the right, go out the back door, walk around the right to the right, and right where you had to make another turn to the right to go to the front was a coal mine. We were almost built in a coal mine. So now I wasn't there to record this or to think about it or even know about it. But I do know that my grandma Russell was the one who delivered me. She had delivered probably 90% of the kids in that community. Everybody called her Ma Russell. Never Mrs. Russell or any other name, but Ma. Just Ma, M-A, period. And she was a mother practically to everybody in one way or another. They'd go by the house, it was near lunchtime or dinner time. They were always invited in to the house. Now, I don't remember anything like that, of course, because I was too young. But that's a story I can develop from what I know. The first recollection I have of anything at all as a child was walking into our kitchen in our new home on Union Avenue. I'm pretty sure that my grandfather Plotz had the house built for us. And I remember, the first thing I remember is that Grandpa was on a stepladder and putting a bulb into the kitchen light. That is my first memory as a child. My next memory is that Grandpa worked on the railroad and he get free passes for anybody, almost any place in the country. Well, we went over one time. We were going to move to Michigan because somebody told Dad that it was better for his health. He had hay fever and asthma. And they said up there wasn't as much pollen, and it probably would be better for him. Now up in Michigan, he had a job with the car dealership, the Cadillac dealer, and named Cruzen. Mr. Cruzen and his wife became like a grandfather and grandma to us after we moved up there. But the moving process, I'm not sure where we started from. I think it was from around Detroit, around where we were close to the railroad, and I think they were having a celebration of a new railroad track that went from southern Michigan, up into northern to Alpena, which is where we made our home then. But I think I can remember that somebody very important was on that first locomotive, first train that we took, because this was an initial trip for the train on this track. It went along Lake Huron up to Michigan. It was nice, really nice. Anyhow, but it seemed like somebody was important. And I thought, in my mind, it was one of the presidents and Alva Edison. Now, years ago, I went to the museum, at the Ford Museum, and here's this engine, a big engine inside this building. And it said that Alva Edison and Hoover run this train on its initial trip. And I think that I was on the train with them at approximately 4 years old, because 5 I came back to New Philadelphia with Grandpa and Grandma to go to school, while Dad stayed up there during the fall season. But up there I can remember Cruisins, a good family that became a kind of a substitute Grandma and Grandpa. And we were out, we used to go to their place, a cabin in Hubbard Lake, Michigan. And they had a real nice cabin made out of logs that was just really, really nice. That's where I caught my first fish. Little perch. And just a little one, you could hardly see it. But it was my first fish. I can remember also that I told my dad during the wintertime up there once, I said, "Look, Dad, I can pee a hole in the snow. You said I couldn't pee a hole in the snow." I did. And I didn't get his joke, but he did. So, but I can just remember the cruisins and the area. I can remember the cabin and where it was located and so on. That's where we got the first idea that we'd like to be in Michigan for a while. So there were times when Dad went up and we stayed home, where we couldn't go. But Dad would go up and work in the machine, in the garage, working on automobiles. And my dad worked on automobiles when people didn't know how to drive. And he had to go teach them how to drive this thing, automobile. But so he did. Had not a bad accident, but a funny accident with his best friend, who tramped on the gas instead of the brake pedal, went up over the curb into somebody's front porch. So he was one of Dad's good friends, and they had a lot of jokes about it. But at any rate, those are things I remember. I remember our house up there. I was at the most 5 years old, but I remember our house, and I remember how it was made up, and I remember it stood up high on cement blocks because it flooded in the summertime, or in the wintertime, summer, whatever, and it lay off and got high water, so they had the houses built up just in case. I can remember catching the devil because at one time I had scarlet fever. And I was home alone. Mom was working just around the block on the garment factory making dresses. So one day I had scarlet fever, and I walked out on the porch. The kids were out there, my friends. And I got the bag of apples that were meant for me and my fever, and had snanny grabs with them. So throw them out in the air, and whoever caught it had an apple. Well, that didn't go over good with Mom very well. So I lost my chance to go see Will Rogers in Steamboat Round the Bend. I wanted to see that movie. They wouldn't let me go because I did that. So those things I can remember, and I guess I can remember something else. I know that we lived upstairs for a while at a barber shop when we moved there for good, and at least for the whole year. We rented a room above a barber shop, and the room eventually became a grocery store downstairs instead of a barber shop. But those are some of the things I remember from my early childhood. I remember the lot of snow in Michigan when we were up there, and I have a hat that I remember with a Navy hat and a little peacoat, like when I was only 5 years old. And I can remember that. I remember having a picture taken of me holding the sled and that. Now, I can remember taking that sled out on the lake at Hubbard Lake behind my dad's car. He towed me, and we had a lot of fun. I can remember when we did that, there was a winter shanty where we had a hole in the ice and had the shanty over it. You could look down and see the fish swimming underneath occasionally, and really, really cozy inside with a lantern in there, and you kept lit, and it kept you warm. And it was just a nice, fun to do. And we didn't catch very many fish, but we had a lot of fun. So those are some of the things I remember. As far as my age, and I either wasn't 5 or I was 5 years old. So at the most, I was 5. Then I came back for school with my grandma and grandpa that were up there visiting us, Grandpa Plotz and Grandma Plotz. And I went home with them so I could start school, and Mom and Dad would come down later. And that's when they come down to the home that Grandpa was putting the light bulb in it. So I guess maybe, I'm not sure whether I saw the Grandpa putting the light bulb in there before. I think I did. I think that happened when I was under the circumstances that I mentioned before. But I came down with them, and I went to school from Grandma and Grandpa's house, which is only about a block at the most. The school was away from us, so I could stop on the way home. And Edith was there, and Edith was only 4 years older than I. She used to drag us around. And but when I come back from Michigan, I could I stopped to see I had a great grandmother. I was so fortunate in my life to have grandparents on both sides of the family. I had a great grandmother on my dad's side, and she was a peach. She would see my dad Edith pulling us around in one of those red and white wagons, and she'd say, "Here she comes. Here she comes with those brats again." Jokingly, of course, because we were not brats. We couldn't have been. But at any rate, I went to school then until Mom and Dad came home, and that's when we went back to 528 Kreider Avenue. And I spent a lot of youth at that place. Want to see how it's going? Is it going okay?
Yeah, should we stop it for right now?
That's right. No. Because hope that whatever, it doesn't make a difference as long as I have a record of it.
Okay, so stop.
You don't need to. I just not yet. My young years, I just lived a half a block, probably a block away from a ball diamond. And the ball diamond had an old oak tree way out in center field. It was called a Lone Oak Diamond. And we had a Lone Oak team, an adult team of men that were softball players. And Bud Mercer was the manager. He was not married and enjoyed having a team. He bought us some uniforms, or got somebody to buy us uniforms, bought the uniforms for them, but I was still too little to play with them. And so now we started a little team then, where the big team was called the Lone Oaks. The little team was called the Acorns. So Bud Mercer bought us caps or T-shirts or something every year. He saw to it that we had something like that. And for years I played as a Acorn, and then I graduated to the Lone Oaks, and I really, really loved it. I played shortstop, and I loved it. I played catcher one day, and that was it. Didn't want that anymore. So went out, played shortstop, and I was to the place where I'd rather play that position than bat. And of course, everybody wanted to bat. Well, I wasn't. No, I didn't. Man, it didn't upset me if I missed my turn, because I loved to play shortstop. And one of my best friends, Johnny Bender, was the third baseman, and he and I were buddies forever. He was 2 years ahead of me, but you're just my age, not my age, but my size. And we had the same interests. We played ping pong down our basement and played softball together. We just, I can still hear him calling for me when I had to finish doing the dishes for Mom. And I was not very good at it. I was slow. I was a slow dishwasher. And Mom, again, was a worker. She worked worked practically all her life. She made dresses in Michigan. She had a dressmaking in our house. She would get patterns and material for people and make dresses. And she worked, then when the war came along, she worked in Dover in some of the war plants. I think she made not helmets, but canteens. They helped make canteens for the soldiers. But at any rate, I played softball. I just loved it. Just loved it. So, and I think this fairly little, this is about enough for a little while here.